Dude, I had the scariest dream last night.
Really?
It was so vivid that, and it was so like sort of mundane in a way. And it was one of those dreams where it's like, it's reliving like just a regular part of your day that you do every day. And so when I woke up, it felt so real. So basically the dream was, it was the exact same thing that happens every single morning. I get up, I go in to ask Courtney, hey, what are the girls' food situation looks like? Do I need to make lunch? Are they eating lunch at school? Because my kids are super bougie, unlike me. And I still have to like specially make PB&Js and stuff. Anyway, I did that. I hate any kind of light or loud noises in the morning.
Okay.
And so I come downstairs. The girls are still getting ready upstairs. Courtney's doing hair or whatever. I come downstairs. I leave the lights off, which is just sort of habit.
Right.
Like I rarely turn any lights on. Like I'll just be doing stuff in the dark because I don't know. I like it, I guess. But anyway, it's just me. They're still upstairs. I get the peanut butter, I get the jelly, I get the bread, doing all the stuff. I'm spreading the peanut butter, whatever. And then I just happen to and I'm facing the living room. So I'm facing like the back of our couch and like the TV in like the living room, right? And
this is in the dream, correct?
This is in the dream, but it's so
regular,
mundane and real.
Okay.
And so I'm spreading the peanut butter, I do the thing, I put it, and as I'm like cutting like the bread, I happen to like look up, and it's I even now I have such cold chills. Literally, it's just the back of somebody's head just sitting on the couch.
You mean like as if they've just been there the whole time? It's
as
not
if they've
just a head. It's just like they were just laying.
It's just somebody sitting at the couch looking in the direction of the TV that's not even on.
Oh my gosh, dude. And then you woke up?
And then I woke up. And it was so scary to me.
I mean, that happens to me sometimes in real life because unbeknownst to me, I'm snoring or something and Ann is just fed up with it and she sleeps on the couch. Sometimes it doesn't tell me or anything. I hate that. And so I get up in the morning. I don't notice that she's not in the bed. I go out there and all of a sudden there's movement. And just like you, I initially walk out there. It's dark. And then I flip the light on and she moves. And I'm like,
You just drag and kick her right in the face.
Right in the face. Howdy, friends, and welcome back to another episode of your favorite podcast, That Would Be Rad. We're a podcast that majors in 80s and 90s nostalgia, comic culture, all things paranormal, and minors in retro video games, tabletop RPGs, pre-internet mysteries, and raising our kids to be half as cool as we were back in the 80s. We're your hosts, Woody Brown.
And Tyler Benz.
What's up, man?
Third time's a charm.
Oh, boy.
Dude, there is something about when you get in your head about the amount of breath that you need, it will mess you up. Like,
it feels like you're drowning.
It really, I mean, just saying that intro, if you get in your head about, okay, well, I need to catch my breath at this point, it just, you literally feel like you're just suffocating.
Yeah, there's a panic moment for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, my goodness gracious, man.
How's your week, pal?
Pretty good. I can't complain. Blessed, man.
Yeah, hashtag blessed.
It's interesting, man. We've talked about this, I guess, earlier in this specific season and towards the tail end of last season. And we say it every week. If you have interesting stories, send them our way. There's various ways that you can do that. You could do it with your own voice. You can send us an email, all that. Man, we have gotten so many awesome ones lately that here we are, episode 4 of this season, and we kind of just decided, hey, man, we need to show people these stories.
Showcase.
We need to showcase them.
Yeah.
Because if we don't, we're going to have a surplus here. And so that's what we're going to do today, man. And I am lucky enough that the way we did it this time around is I read these stories and have not told Tyler anything about them yet.
Nope.
And so this is the first time he's hearing them too. And I don't know, I kind of like doing it that way.
Yeah, I'm super psyched about it.
So without further ado, let's get going. So this actually comes from a listener, Lou from Mississippi, relatively new to our show, but he reportedly rifled through our back catalog already. So
I love it.
I'm so excited to share these stories with you, though, because he sent them a while back, and man, they're just so good. And this first one starts out with some backstory, which, sometimes I think people might not want to share, but I'm so glad that he did, because as we'll go through, Tyler, and listeners, I think you'll agree, it's immediately apparent that Lou is one of us. I mean, it's like, it's so awesome to read someone's backstory and sort of like be able to relate to it immediately. So here we go. So Lou says, okay, this will be a long tale, and I apologize, but I just feel like a little backstory will kind of help you understand things from my perspective. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to sit and read this, if you get through it all, LOL. I was born in 1979, raised by a single dad from the age of 7 months until he remarried when I was 10. And I didn't have the typical upbringing. We lived out in the woods outside of Citronelle, Alabama. Like, our driveway was a mile trail through the woods. We got our meat from hunting, trapping, fishing, and raising goats, chickens, turkeys, rabbits. We even had a garden for our veggies, a variety of fruit trees and berry bushes. Even got all of our milk from the goats. Going to town and a store was an exciting adventure for me. I'm just going to break out real quick. Already kind of talking Tyler's language for sure. For me, when I moved back to the States, I remember hanging out with some of my buddies who lived in like Forsyth County, Georgia, when I was in high school, and we'd walk, ride our bikes, whatever, from their house to this little bitty gas station, dude, that was kind of close by. I say kind of close. It was several miles, and it took us like hours to get there almost because it's just mountainous area, and it would take us forever. And then we just go there for some RC Cola and peanuts, handful of Slim Jims.
I had one of the same, kind of the same thing. I think it used to be a general store, but it was just called Palmer's.
Yeah, this one was like, oh God, what was it called? Like Granny's or something like that.
Oh yeah.
And they sold like live fish and bait.
Oh yeah.
And we're talking about a place, in case listeners, I want to make sure they picture this correctly. There's no sidewalks. This is like rural, mountainous, small roads, and we're just riding our bikes on them, going there, and it was awesome. Okay.
So dangerous.
No kidding.
Side note, Citronelle is a few hours from, I used to live in Enterprise, Alabama. So
nice.
Man, me and Lou are like super tight.
We're real tight.
Very tight.
So let's get back into it here. He goes on to say, my dad wasn't into modern living except for a few little things. When he went to work, I'd stay with my aunt and uncle and my cousin, who lived a few miles down the road. Down the dirt road they lived on were several Choctaw families. Me and my cousin would walk down there to play with other kids, and we got to listen to so many cool stories from the matriarch, elder, who we all just called grandmother. She would tell native lore and stories. I wish I could remember more of it, but I was pretty young. And that's how I lived until my dad remarried and my stepmom brought us into the 20th century. We had a TV already, but only 3 channels. When he remarried, we got a VCR and eventually a satellite. Those huge ones that you had to put in a code and it would turn to pick up a different group of channels.
Had the same one. You would turn the little dial and you would see it turning in the yard.
Yeah, huge thing, man. I mean, the size of a Volkswagen.
Yeah.
Let's see. Where did he go here? Oh, and through all of that is how I finally got access to stuff like Conan, Red Sonja, Kroll, Excalibur, the Dragon Slayer, Predator, and the Terminator, plus so much more.
There we go.
Before that, I read a lot. I was reading H.G. Wells and Philip K. Dick by the time I was 9 or so. My stepmom would take me to the library whenever she had errands to run, and I'd sit there for hours reading and researching. I loved fantasy and sci-fi fiction, history and science, and anything to do with monsters. So that was my childhood. Things kind of took a turn when I got my first guitar at 15, but I digress. So I have some health issues. a genetic mutation that causes issues with my cartilage and bones. I had my first hip surgery at 15 as a temporary fix, and I was told I'd need another, more extreme fix once I stopped growing, but by 21 or so at the latest. So when I graduated in 98, I decided to do some adventuring and traveling while I could. I'd had a sheltered life, and I wanted to experience a different life. I took my savings from summer and after-school jobs and started out on a Greyhound. I'm so jealous already. That's me speaking. Sorry.
Yeah.
I had an acoustic guitar and a backpack with everything I thought I'd need. A couple of changes of clothes, a Walkman, and my favorite mixtapes, some extra guitar strings, some camping gear, and that's about it. I traveled through New Mexico and Arizona, seeing the desert-like areas. I made it to Roswell, which was awesome, watching the skies as I camped out. Then a week later, I was walking the streets experiencing the LA night scenes. Met some weird people, and I traveled with them to Portland, eventually making my way up into Washington. I don't remember if it was a National Geographic or maybe a documentary, but I wanted to see the rainforest-like area of the Pacific Northwest in Washington. I wanted to hike on a volcano up there, and I really wanted to go to Seattle. I was a huge grunge fan. Alice in Chains especially, and the Melvins were always a huge influence for me.
God, this dude is literally
You know what I'm saying?
us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But all that aside, I finally made it out into those beautiful rainforests. I camped out in the state park for a couple days, and although I had no idea what I was doing, I kept my eyes open for any signs of Sasquatch. I never did see one, but that atmosphere was almost like magic. It was like I was in a fairy's wood. There were times when the feeling was like, I don't know, whimsical. Like I was in their playground and I just wasn't able to see them, but I could feel them.
I know exactly that feeling.
And then, at other times, it was like I walked into the wrong neighborhood, where even the trees felt malicious. Just this oppressive, dark vibe where I was definitely not welcome.
You know, that's a common like Bigfoot thing, that like dread feeling.
Yeah, and I think they attribute that to
Infrasound?
Yeah, infrasound, that's right.
I think so, yeah. What do they call it? Isn't it called well, it's like a subsonic frequency, but just that feeling of dread.
You come back to it. I'm gonna continue the story here.
Okay.
It was definitely an incredible experience. I was in Washington for about 3 months before I had to head back to Alabama. My hip had progressively gotten worse, and I wasn't able to continue on. I had my second surgery and was stuck in a wheelchair for 2 months recovering.
Dang.
I got to go on a couple more adventures before adulthood and life took over. Now I live on my stepmom's family land in southeast Mississippi. I inherited the farm here where I raise a few animals, plant a garden. I have my fruit trees and berry bushes. I built my 72-year-old dad a tiny home overlooking the lake, and my two oldest boys live with me. Out here, over the last 15 years is where I've had some really weird experiences. Now we're getting into some juicy stuff.
Yep. Oh, by the way, they're saying that this is also connected to the Oz factor, which we've talked about. Usually the Oz factor is when everything goes silent in the woods. But I guess the scientifically, if you will, they're connecting that feeling of dread, which is also called like panic in the woods. Yeah.
And I haven't had I say that now that I think about it. I've had some moments where I felt sort of weird like that.
Like you're being watched.
Yeah,
almost.
and yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Man. Okay, back into it. About 2 or 3 years ago, I was getting things ready for hunting season. My favorite place out here to hunt, there's a little pond out to the left. On the right, about 250 yards, the land slopes down into a swamp. Right in the middle is this small little valley, an open area about half the size of a football field that's surrounded by trees with the swamp on one side and the pond on the other. I was checking out my tree stand, making sure everything was good and nothing happened since last hunting season. I just finished putting out some grass seeds. I climbed up the tree stand ladder. It's about 15 feet up to the platform. I was maybe about 10 feet up when I started feeling weird. I broke out in chill bumps, started sweating, and even felt kind of nauseous. I wasn't even thinking about anything weird going on, really, but maybe just some stomach issues. Hanging onto the ladder, I just took some deep breaths and kind of twisted around to catch the breeze in my face. And that's when I saw a buck, just a few feet away into the clearing. He was just standing there, staring at me. He looked, I want to say, old, like his coat was faded. He was, as far as I could see, pretty good size, and he should have looked like a perfectly well-fed, healthy buck. But he still just had this unhealthy or unclean look to him. And he just stared at me. He didn't stomp his hooves. He didn't move his head up and down to look. Didn't do anything, any of the normal things a deer will do when they see or think they see a person. I hadn't been very quiet or anything up to that point. I had dragged off some fallen branches, spread out seeds, stomped around, and now I'm up on this ladder with this deer staring right at me. And there's not a sound anywhere. The woods are completely silent. No squirrels barking or jumping around, making noise, no birds, nothing.
So yeah, the Oz factor.
Exactly. Now, I do carry a handgun when I'm out in these woods.
Now we're talking.
We have a variety of dangerous critters. Wild pigs, venomous snakes, coyotes, even coyote-wolf hybrids have been positively spotted out here, along with big black cats that supposedly don't exist.
Yeah.
This county also has the highest black bear population in the state, and I've seen a couple on my property tearing up fruit trees. So I don't go into the woods unarmed, and all these years I've never had to do anything aside from fire a warning shot to scare off a couple of curious coyotes.
Which a deer is typically gonna, I mean, they would like bluff charge maybe, but typically they're out of there.
Yeah, and when I see them in my neighborhood, like when I'm running or whatever, they will do that sort of head bobbing, like,
Yeah.
you know, just to kind of get a good, better look of you, and then they'll just take off, not just like stare.
Yeah.
Let's see, where was he at here? Well, I had completely forgotten about my sidearm. This buck, and he did have antlers, but they looked kind of malformed, like they didn't grow in the usual shape or pattern. He just stared.
Oh man, is this going to where I think it's
Hold
going?
on a second, man. Why don't you listen and find out? Well, I don't know what you mean for real, but just shush. So rude.
So rude.
The pains in my stomach were getting worse. I wanted to get up to the platform so I could turn and maybe get a better look. Honestly, I think I just wanted to be further away from the deer, but I was still trying to think logically. I had never heard of a knot deer at this point.
That's what I was going to.
I knew all about shapeshifters, tricksters, and Wendigo from native lore, but I wasn't even thinking about that kind of stuff at the time. I finally managed to look away from the deer's gaze, which was harder than it should have been, like I was kind of mesmerized or something. I climbed up the last few feet, got on the platform, turned around to get a clear look, and nothing. He was gone. No sounds, no noise from him bounding through the brush or leaves on the ground, no snorts or grunts like a deer will do sometimes when it runs from a hunter.
Yeah.
It was just gone. And so were the stomach cramps, nausea, sick feeling.
Wow.
Poof. Except for being a bit sweaty and a bit of an issue in calming my breathing, it was like nothing happened. I sat down and just, I don't know, I sat there for 20 minutes before I even tried to get my thoughts in order and attempt to rationalize it. Watching the area he was just standing in moments ago, but how do you rationalize being scared and nearly petrified by a deer that disappears when you look away? I eventually got back down and even started walking over to that area to check for tracks before I chickened out. I was worried that I wouldn't see the tracks at all or they wouldn't be deer tracks. I love the outdoors, the woods, nature, and all. And I love that magical or spiritual world that's behind the veil. But some things I don't want any part of, and that deer was one of them. I don't know what it was. Haven't seen it or another since. He says, I didn't intend to write such a long, short story, but it's hard to describe something like that without going into detail. And I wanted to at least give a little history about myself, my experiences and all, and that I know the woods, the animals, and whatever that deer was, it wasn't natural. Well, that's my not deer story. And thanks for taking the time to read this, and hope y'all enjoy hearing about this encounter. Wish I had some kind of evidence aside from just my account, but that's how it always seems to go.
Wow. Yeah, dude, as soon as you started saying, like, sort of the strange things regarding the deer, I was hoping that it was a not deer story because, like, I mean, you see a lot of those, like, online, but like with everything else, it's kind of hard to tell, like, well, is somebody just, like, full of it, or, is it sort of more creepypasta kind of thing? And so anytime you hear these, like, sort of what I would take as, like, true accounts, man, they're awesome.
Yeah. First, thank you, Lou, for not just being brave to send that to us, but letting us share it with our listeners. And then secondly, yeah, man, it's funny, the Not Deer episode that we did, which you can listen to here.
Hear more about this rad strangeness on That Would Be Rad, Season 2, Episode 32, the Not Deer episode.
Is one of those that I absolutely loved. I hadn't really heard of that before. I'm sure I teased you about it, in fact. But as we were doing that episode, it was kind of like, man, that is pretty scary to think about. But I'm so glad that we have, like, a listener who had this kind of an experience so that we can, it just personalizes it. You know what I mean?
Big
like
time.
you said, it's not like something that we just heard someone else talk about, So it's really, really cool to get, like, a firsthand account. And I don't know, man, there's just something about it that's just so freaky, imagining being up on that ladder in that sort of mesmerized, hypnotic gaze, not being able to escape it, and that sort of primal power that a creature could have.
It's so, like, off-putting too, because, like, from what I understand with, like, the not deer, it's almost like a
After these messages, we'll be right back.
At Sierra, discover great deals on top brand workout gear, like high-quality bikes, which might lead to another discovery. Getting back in the saddle isn't always comfortable. Good news is Sierra has massage guns. And chafe wipes, too. Discover top brands at unexpectedly low prices. Sierra, let's get moving.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Your data is like gold to hackers. They're selling your passwords, bank details, and private messages. McAfee helps stop them. Secure VPN keeps your online activity private. AI-powered text scam detector spots phishing attempts instantly. And with award-winning antivirus, you get top-tier hacker protection. Plus, you'll get up to $2 million in identity theft coverage, all for just $39.99 for your first year. Visit McAfee.com. Cancel anytime. Terms apply.
The Jack Welch Management Institute at Strayer University helps you go from, I know the way, to I've arrived with our top 10 ranked online MBA. Gain skills you can learn today and apply tomorrow. Get ready to go from make it happen to made it happen and keep striving. Visit strayer.edu/Jack Welch MBA to learn more. Strayer University is certified to operate in Virginia by Chev and has many campuses, including at 2121 15th Street North in Arlington, Virginia.
Get the Angel Reese special at McDonald's now. Let's break it down. My favorite barbecue sauce, American cheese, crispy bacon, pickles, onions, and a sesame seed bun, of course. And don't forget the fries and a drink. Sound good? Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
At participating restaurants for a limited time.
I can say to my new Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra, hey, find a keto-friendly restaurant nearby and text it to Beth and Steve. And it does, without me lifting a finger. So I can get in more squats anywhere I can. 1, 2, 3.
Will that be cash or credit?
Credit. 4.
Galaxy S25 Ultra, the AI companion that does the heavy lifting so you can do you. Get yours at Samsung.com. Compatible with select apps. Requires Google Gemini account. Results may vary based on input. Check responses for accuracy.
Still getting around to that fix on your car? You got this. On eBay, you'll find millions of parts guaranteed to fit. Doesn't matter if it's a major engine repair or your first time swapping your windshield wipers. eBay has that part you need, ready to click perfectly into place for changes big and small. Loud or quiet, find all the parts you need at prices you'll love. Guaranteed to fit every time. But you already know that. eBay. Things, people, love. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
What makes a great pair of glasses? At Warby Parker, it's all the invisible extras without the extra cost. Their designer quality frames start at $95, including prescription lenses, plus scratch-resistant, smudge-resistant, and anti-reflective coatings, and UV protection, and free adjustments for life. To find your next pair of glasses, sunglasses, or contact lenses, or to find the Warby Parker store nearest you, head over to warbyparker.com. That's warbyparker.com.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
It's a pretty cool place if you're a Martian.
Or a vampire.
You think you really know what's happening around here, don't you?
Is anyone out there?
We're fighters for truth, justice, and the American way.
Hey, this is Woody.
And this is Tyler. And you're listening to That Would Be Rad.
And now, back to our show.
It's almost like the uncanny valley sort of effect where your brain is like, you know, all of your synapses are like firing and you're like, oh, this is just a regular deer. So you're thinking of it in terms of like, okay, well, it's a typical like prey animal. It may sort of bluff charge, but if I do a quick movement or whatever, it's typically going to run away. But like then the uncanny valley thing comes in where it's like, oh, it kind of looks like there's something that's not quite right in the way that it looks and its behavior. And some of those other ones on the on our Not Deer episode where they're saying like the eyes were like closer, like,
like
forward.
Human, right? Yeah.
Well, no, they were like, instead of like on the side, like a prey animal, they were like sort of like facing forward, like a predator. And it's just those like little tiny like discrepancies that it's just so off-putting, you know?
Yeah. And especially because like, even if you're just sort of a rookie in terms of loving nature, you really kind of go out there to like, you know, reconnect, be one with, you know what I mean? Like have these sort of happy experiences. And then whenever you accidentally have one of these, man, it's got to be terrifying.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I totally agree. I love that story. And Thank you so much.
Yes, man. I loved the context as well because like I mentioned before we dove in, it's just like, I mean, it's just awesome to know there's other people. And that's what I think we both love about our show is that it's given us the opportunity to connect with folks that are into the same stuff that we were, that, you know, like the same kind of things that we did when we were kids, Went to the library and just spent hours reading. It's just, it's awesome, man.
Yeah, and if you want to hear about Leisure Suit Larry, you can do so over on the this week's Patreon.
Yeah. Oh, we're actually going to hear another fascinating story from Lou that is, I don't know, it's wild. Okay, you ready?
Yeah, dude.
All right, guys, here's my story about my...
Hey, real quick, before we get into this, I wonder what...
Like you're physically making my head itch. Go ahead.
Sorry, I know I'm trying to drive us away from the dock here, but no, I just find this interesting because, we've always kind of had this internal joke of like, well, the people may come to this show because of pop culture, paranormal, the topic, but typically they're either going to love it or hate it. And if they're going to stay, they're staying because they're people like us, and typically like Lou, they're the people that if we had on the show, they would just blend right in. And the reason that I'm bringing this up is I wonder if there is any sort of connection with, like, you and I both have had, like, me especially, I didn't even really realize it until I got on the show and started sort of opening up about some of this stuff. But we've had our fair share of sort of what you would consider possibly like paranormal kind of, sort of being caught in those scenarios. And so I wonder if there is something about like growing up around that same time, being into a lot of the same stuff that we're into. It's almost like our the doors of perception are opened a little more, so we're like able to maybe like witness a lot of the other stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I haven't really had that many.
That
I would classify as paranormal.
The weird like ghost couple.
Yeah. Okay,
that's pretty bizarre.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was okay. Yeah, fair.
Hear about Woody's terrifying experience, perhaps the only one that could be classified as paranormal, and That Would Be Rad, Season 1, Episode 10, The Halloween Spooktacular.
But anyway, continue.
Yeah, maybe like the late 90s, but maybe the 80s and 90s and early 2000s was just a time when all that stuff was wide open.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Lou's story goes like this. He says, okay, this happened back when I was around 7 or 8. I was staying at my mom's for Christmas in Laplace, Louisiana. This particular night, I was at my grandma's house, this big 2-story home built before World War I. My Uncle Donnie had recently moved back, and we've always been close. He's the black sheep of the family, same as me. He's the one that introduced me to D&D, fantasy and sci-fi books, comics, video games, and his vinyl collection definitely had an influence on me with bands like Black Sabbath, Queen, Styx, Pink Floyd, and Led Zeppelin.
Let's go. Oh, speaking of Led Zeppelin, have we got an episode coming up for you?
Mm-hmm. Anyways, I was sleeping in his room, which had blacked out windows, so at night it was pitch black. I don't know what woke me up that night. Probably my uncle's impossibly loud snoring, but when I did wake up, there was a white mist, kind of like a fog, swirling almost like a cyclone, basically looking like a portal.
Whoa.
Yeah. It was right below the ceiling in the middle of the room. This spinning mist had its own light source, but it didn't light up the room. It's kind of hard to explain. It had light, but that light didn't touch anything except the swirling mist. As I watched this, here's where it gets intense, man. This is unbelievable. As I watched this, faces started appearing in it. Some were like the classic stone gargoyle faces. I hate to use this description, but they looked demonic. Some faces were more human-looking, but the features would be exaggerated, like huge eyes, ears, or noses. And some had long, flowing hair that trailed behind them. As it went on, I could see hands and arms and upper torsos, but I never saw one that fully manifested a full body. At this point, I'm literally petrified. I knew for a fact that I was awake and definitely not dreaming. I finally managed to get a bit of control over myself and attempted to wake my uncle up. Now, up to this point, the apparitions were just flying around in this cyclone mist. But as soon as I moved and attempted to speak, they noticed me. Several flew out of the mist.
Dude, the abyss looked back at you.
Dude, this is so terrifying. Several flew out of the mist and started flying directly towards me. They would swoop down and fly right in front of me and make faces at me. And although I couldn't hear a sound, I got the impression that they were laughing at me. Whoa. I slowly reached over to shake my uncle, and that's when one of them, one that I've always thought of as the witch, because it looked feminine and had those exaggerated features I mentioned with long flowing hair, she flew down and then stopped right in front of me and kind of hovered there. Shaking her head, no. Then she released a soundless scream right in my face.
Jeez.
I don't have the words to describe the feelings of how terrified I was at this point. It was then that I slowly pulled the blankets over my head, shut my eyes tight and wished, hoped, and prayed that they would just go away. I never did peek out from under the blankets, but I could still feel them in the room. And I didn't go back to sleep that night. I don't know how long it was before morning came and my uncle woke up. I didn't say anything about what I saw because I felt like the witch was warning me to keep quiet about it. Years later, when I was around 19 or so, I eventually did tell my uncle about the experience. Afterwards, he just told me that I should forget about it and keep my mouth shut. I tried to ask him if he'd seen them before or if he knew what they were, and he shut me down quick and refused to talk about it. So that was around 37 years ago, and it honestly still scares me. I've never seen that or anything like it since. It was a few years later that they sold that house, but that night was the last time I ever went up to my uncle's room or even went up the stairs. According to my mom, my uncle had gotten into occult type stuff when he was in his teens, played with spirit boards and so on.
Yep.
So maybe he caused some kind of portal to open up. I don't know. Maybe. I don't have any answers, just lots of questions, and honestly wish I could just convince myself it was nothing but the overactive imagination of a child. Well, that's it for this story. I really have no idea what was going on in that room that night. I know that it wasn't a dream, and I know that I was awake. And if it was a hallucination, I've never experienced anything like it again, which I'm very thankful for because I can still vividly remember the witch's face and soundless screaming.
Wow.
And I don't want to see it again.
And real quick, how old did he say he was?
He was like 7 or 8.
Dude, it's exactly what I was talking about. It feels like that's around the age that I would have seen like my sort of shadow man encounter. Like it I don't know, man.
I know we've mentioned something like this on the show before, but there are things I've heard before, and there's, across different belief systems and stuff, that the younger you are, the closer, the more the more innocent you are, the closer you are to being able to see that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be, something like that. But let me finish his writing here. He says, "Thanks for taking the time to read this. I've got a few more stories to tell later on." And he says, "P.S. I just listened to the episode about cursed movies, and y'all were talking about The Exorcist. This is really cool, man. And you can listen to that episode here."
Hear about the real-life horror surrounding some of Hollywood's greatest scary movies on That Would Be Rad, Season 3, Episode 12, Poltergeist and Other Cursed Movies.
I've read the book about the actual case that inspired the movie, and something that wasn't mentioned in the episode was kind of important, I think. The boy who was allegedly possessed, he was really close to one of his aunts. That aunt was really into New Age stuff, the occult and so on.
Mm-hmm.
She even read tarot cards and used spirit boards with her nephew. After she passed away, I can't remember if it was from an illness or accident her nephew either took her spirit board or got another one in an attempt to contact her spirit. According to the book, he was able to make contact with something that he thought was his aunt. It wasn't until many sessions later that whatever spirit, entity, or demon stopped pretending to be his aunt, and that's when things started getting crazy, so to speak.
How many times?
Yeah,
I mean, he's binged the episodes, but that's such a topic that we bring up
all the time,
a lot.
Yeah. He goes on to say, I've never used a spirit board and have zero plans to change that, but I have studied the phenomenon, and one of the very first rules is that you never play alone. While I'm simultaneously very open-minded, I'm also skeptical, but whether it's all real or all BS. Some things aren't worth the risk. He says, but whether it's all real or BS, some things aren't worth the risk.
Did you know that?
No, I mean, dude, let's talk about it after.
Yeah, sorry.
So while I would love to get one and test it out, I'm going to just let spirit boards stay in the realm of possibility. So anyways, this poor kid who was mourning the loss of a favorite aunt, someone he cared deeply for and had a bond with, just wanted to talk to his aunt again, and instead opened the doorway for something to come through and gave it his complete trust, thinking that it was her, or at least that's the story.
We'll return after these messages.
The PC gave us computing power at home, the internet connected us, and mobile let us do it pretty much anywhere. Now generative AI lets us communicate with technology in our own language using our own senses. But figuring it all out when you're living through it is a totally different story. Welcome to Leading the Shift, a new podcast from Microsoft Azure. I'm your host, Susan Ettlinger. In each episode, leaders will share what they're learning to help you navigate all this change with confidence. Please join us. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
When the game tips off, the NBA action is just beginning on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because FanDuel is your home for NBA live betting. However you want to play, now is the perfect time to join. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. 21 plus and present in Virginia. First online, real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued is non-withdrawable bonus bets which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
There's something out there waiting for us. And it ain't no dead.
Hey, this is Woody.
And this is Tyler. And you're listening to That Would Be Rad.
And now, back to our show. Whew.
Yeah, dude. We talk about that nonstop, about that idea of the sort of like, why can't I think of the words? I'm like drawing blanks today. It's that idea of somebody sort of just posing as, oh, it's your grandfather that you miss so dearly. It's your aunt who you were really close with, and it effectively just gets a little darker and darker and darker. But it is weird, and I have like my own sort of far-fetched fictional belief that like, well, what if we believe in like multi-dimensions, what if in another dimension that your aunt who, and again, if we're thinking of time in like a non-linear way, what if your aunt is being possessed by something, and that's how they're getting this insider knowledge to be able to communicate like through, interdimensionally to this, whatever's on the other side of the Ouija board, to be like, well, because it is weird. I mean, and these are things that are pretty common where they will know like certain things that like only you and your aunt could have ever known.
Right.
That's the scary
Well,
part.
and my thoughts on that. Well, first, let me say this. Lou, dude, knocked it out of the park with these two stories.
Big time.
And again, thank you for the comments on what we missed on that episode, because both of us never knew that kind of stuff about, you should. Now, you wouldn't have to tell me not to do it by myself. Okay.
Well, me too.
Like
yeah.
I'd have Ernest Saves Christmas at the ready.
There you go.
You know what I mean? So after listening to that and just really like thinking about the portal in his uncle's room and stuff, and maybe that attributing to the Ouija boards, and then like you were saying, so if to me a theory about that same non-linear time, you wouldn't really even have, if you were like a malevolent entity, person, spirit, whatever, you wouldn't really, if time wasn't linear and you had access to it, you wouldn't almost even have to like quote unquote possess anyone. You could just kind of over time gather that intel. And then as a means to get into this other world or dimension, utilize that intel.
Yeah, but I'm talking more about where I've heard stories where they'll be communicating and it'll be like, they'll bring up like situations where it was like just, say it was like your grandfather or whatever before he died. It would have been like just him and just his grandfather in the hospital before he passed away. The only ones in the room. Yeah. Like stuff like that where it's like, how would they possibly get this information?
I mean, I think you and I should come up with a code word so that whenever I come back to haunt you.
Oh, for sure.
How about gerrymandering? I'm just kidding.
Possum.
Oh, God. I mean, that's just on a laundry list of reasons why. And it's like, I feel like at this point, I'm just like preaching to the choir and or people are just like, we get it. Okay? You're not going to ever use a Ouija board. You think you saw a movie with a skinless man. Like, I know I say these things a lot, but I really feel like especially if our kids are listening at some point in the future and they're like, man, I wonder, just like Lou was saying, like, it could be completely made up. It could be real. In any case, I'm not real interested in trying to prove that theory.
Yeah.
Or accidentally opening things. We've got some topics that we're going to talk about later this season, finally get to, where we really kind of think like at some point there's some strong evidence and or, I don't know, some interesting things that point toward a portal of some sort being open, or at least multiple of them, multiple portals.
Yeah.
And there's areas that we've talked about, adjacently a little bit when we talk about window areas in the world. Yeah. When we talk about
Missing 411. That's
Missing 411, Skinwalker Ranch,
staircases in the woods.
And again, not to always promote books to read, but I really think if you have any kind of interest in this type of stuff, there's two books that I think you should read. One of them, of course, is the Skinwalker Ranch book. It's just fascinating. Now, whether or not these, and like, I want to be transparent here. I sort of enter into those type of things with a higher level of skepticism than I think you would think listening, Yeah. The book is fascinating. I mean, it's just absolutely fascinating. And the other one is written by the guy in Georgia.
It's called the Skinwalker Ranch of the South or whatever. The Meadow Project.
That's it. The Meadow Project.
Yeah.
Both of those books are just incredible. And then, of course, we always have to shout out Tim Marchenko's Disembodied Voices, because it kind of sort of takes a lot of those topics and sort of just, there's just a lot of, it's just one of the best books I've ever read. Frankly.
Yeah, and the reason it resonates so much with us is because it's like some of the stuff that he's talking about. It's not like that stuff isn't in other books, but what makes it so great is like just that sort of theme that always kind of seems to pop up on the show of like the, it's almost like whatever's out there or whatever that other thing is like trying to lure people with like, everything from like beeping sounds to the sound of like a baby crying.
Mimicking a family member's voice.
Yeah, it's like a mimic kind of thing. And the thing that makes that book so great is that's the whole book, It's like that little, it's kind of, Joshua Cutchin is similar in this where he's also fantastic with taking these like little themes that you see sort of like a cross section of like in all these other stories, and he just makes entire books about that theme, of like, smells associated with paranormal, food and drink offerings of the paranormal. And Disembodied Voices is very much in that way too, of like that mimic kind of thing, and how it sort of cross pollinates in all these different cultures.
Yeah, that's right. It's a global, and that so not only is it super well researched, his book, but oftentimes there are some instances with other writings that I've read where it's kind of like, boy, that is a stretch, to kind of connect those red threads. With Tim Marchenko's book, Disembodied Voices. And I promise you, again, we are not sponsored by him.
No.
But it's just, I can't help but, I guess, sing its praises because it's just so good. I'm not, this isn't just me blowing smoke or anything. It is one of the best books I've ever read because it kicks off with his personal experience. This sort of triggers this thought and this passion for researching this stuff. And then he just takes it to the world, man. And the threads that he connects, there wasn't ever a point when I was reading that book that I felt like, oof, that's kind of a stretch, It makes total sense.
Yeah.
And it's just fantastic. So if you haven't gotten a copy of that, man, I'm telling you that if you're going to buy one book this year, that's got to be it.
I mean, I have Woody's copy, and I will never give it back.
He's never going to give it back, man.
Nope. No, sir. But at least you got to read it first.
This is true. One thing that I was kind of going to bring up after that first story was, he made mention of, and again, there's so many aspects of his context, and that's part of the reason why I shared it, that I'm so jealous of. I wanted to kind of be a Dharma bum and just get on the train and just see the country with nothing but my guitar. It's Jack Kerouac and the Beat Generation, and go up the West Coast and the Pacific Northwest and just experience it like that. But also the fact that he had access to like an elder of the Choctaw community where he could just hear these stories and these tales that were just, that's just priceless to me.
Yeah.
I was reminded about, just the Skinwalker phenomenon in general is something that, and I can't remember, I think we talked about when we were recording Patreon bonus episode, when I was talking about that cave painting out in Utah.
Yes.
And we talked about how like there's a lot of sort of Native American lore, and even globally, really, not just, I guess, unique to the Americas, of beings and or creatures that communicated with humans, and either shared something with them in terms of knowledge, technology, or whatever. And the fact that there are, again, this global connection, skinwalkers and creatures that can kind of shapeshift, exist in, I think, every culture. And that's kind of a broad thing for me to say. I don't know if that's 100% true, but so far, every continent that I can think of has some sort of shape-shifting creature in their lore.
Yeah, I would be curious to find a civilization or a society that did not have that.
Yeah.
I can't think of any that like specifically just don't. Because if you're looking into like sort of like the Middle East, it's like it's sort of associated with the jinn. If you're looking into sort of the British Isles, Ireland, Scotland, England, it's it's related to like the Fae or like fairy abductions and stuff. It's just we think after 200 plus episodes, we're convinced that whatever this mechanism is, it's all the same. It's just viewed through maybe a different lens societally and called a different name. But we think it's all very similar because the behavior is the same throughout all these cultures.
Right.
And
what's fascinating to me too, man, is because I think it's real easy for us as, quote unquote, modern human beings in the year 2025 to kind of read some of those old native stories and think, well, this is just their explanation for a phenomenon that we later learned was X, Y, and Z. And in some cases, 100% true, right? Like there's this, they look up, there's a yellow ball in the sky and you can feel its heat. It must be God. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So there is some of that. But this is why we talk about the books that we talk about, such as Passport to Magonia and things like that, because what ends up happening is you start to see these accounts and these documented accounts where things that they're experiencing back then, you could literally carbon copy, remove the date, and you would read it and think, oh yeah, man, somebody just experienced that, last year.
Yeah. Well, I think the funny thing is, I don't know if we would have still been under the impression of this at the beginning of us, starting the podcast. But I will say it is funny and interesting to me that there was a point, and I can't really speak for you, Woody, but there was a point for me where, I was kind of viewing everything as being like alien abduction. Mm-hmm. And so I was looking at all of the past stuff as like, oh, well, they were calling this thing like fairy abductions, but it was really just grays. And they just didn't really see it that way. But after 200 plus episodes of, studying and, researching all these different sort of stories and folklore and stuff from around the world, I'm to the point where I'm completely the opposite now. I think all of those other things, all those fairy abductions, all those ancient sort of like the jinn, all that stuff, I think the alien abduction now isn't like the main thing. I think that's just a continuation of whatever has always been around. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like originally I used to look back like almost in like I'm so enlightened and I'm a modern man and I see all these alien abductions and grays. So of course that's what these idiots were seeing back then. They just didn't have like the terminology or the mindset to see that. Whereas now I'm the opposite. I'm like, oh no, I was the idiot, and those ancient peoples, this new sort of alien gray that kind of popped up, like maybe early 70s, mid to late 70s, as far as like public zeitgeist wise. That's just a continuation. So whatever this thing is, changed shape like pretty. Not very far back. Mm-hmm. And so that's just a continuation of, that like the older, more ancient cultures, like I feel like they had a better understanding of what it was than even we do.
Yeah. And I might have said this already. I feel like I did. I might have said it today already. But it could just be they're all different things. All these phenomenons exist at the same time, but they're coming from different places. Or, I like your idea. Also, I would say like, since starting the show, I would say that my sort of, the way that I've changed is that my definition of, quote, alien has broadened to sort of just include, all kinds of things. I don't know, because like a part of me, I don't know, man. A part of me still, I don't know if it's a want, like selfishly, I want it to be sort of like beings from another planet. You look up, where I live, you can, and I'm very fortunate in this sense, I can look up in the sky. There's not a lot of like light pollution, and I can just see the stars, man. And I just, ever since I was a little kid, it's like, man, I wonder, and this is going to sound really silly, and I'm sure I've said this too, but I look up there and I think, I wonder, like, let's just assume for a second that there's another world out there that's somewhat like ours. Heck, let's assume that there's another world out there that is just as close as it can be to human. What I like to think about is like, man, wouldn't you like to hear their version of, the Beatles or Bob Dylan? And just listen to those songs, that endless catalog of movies and entertainment. I mean, I know that's silly, but that's, or like even parallel universes, man. I think about the same thing. Like, I would love to like have access to all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is a little bit of, I think heartbreak is a little dramatic, but there is a little bit of, my view on these things now is definitely different from when we started, as far as like the alien, they have to be extraterrestrial. It has to be outside of our planetary system. And they've come this long way, and they've been able to do it because of this, massive advanced like technology compared to ours. And I'm just to the point now where like I miss like thinking that way.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm being honest, I don't know that I think that at all anymore.
Yeah.
I think it's far more, more credible in my mind to be like an interdimensional thing, to be coming from like our own sort of inner Earth, hollow Earth theory, that kind of thing. Or
that reminds me, we got to do an episode about that this year too. Because
oh yeah, and like the Admiral Byrd, like the Antarctica stuff. Yeah, I just think, I mean, even like with the U.S., like the underwater submerged objects that you constantly hear about, like coming out of the oceans. And then we know that, like, well, there's still like, I mean, what is it? It's like 80% of the ocean that we haven't discovered. Yeah.
Terrifying.
And it's weird because then you see that video of...
oh, please tell me you're talking about the kayaker. Got swallowed by a humpback whale, pal, and then spit back out.
Oh, no. I know that's crazy.
Oh, my God.
No. I'm talking about this one, I think it was the 90s or maybe 2000s, but it kind of just popped up in, I would say, the last like 5-10 years. But it's this video where this crew goes down, we're talking like Marianas Trench, like super deep kind of thing in a submarine. And they get to this point where there's like a ring of like water underwater. Have you seen this?
Yeah. Yes.
It's so fascinating. And this guy's like head
it's
scientist.
like another lake.
It's like a lake underneath.
The density and stuff. And it reminds me of, dude, what's the movie?
The Abyss?
No.
Which one are you talking
It's like dude, it's a cheesy movie. Oh, God. I'm pretty sure it's like whatever the Megalodon or whatever. The Jason Statham movie.
Oh, the Meg? I haven't seen any of those
two,
movies.
I think. They have to,
I've heard they're really funny.
It. Yeah, they're fun, dude. It's a fun watch.
Yeah. Oh, I haven't seen it. But I do like stuff like that. And then you look at that, if you think of that, like even like biblically, like the firmament and stuff, and it's like the water beneath the water and like all that kind of stuff. It's like, maybe that is like where the things are coming out. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then, obviously it gets us into like Atlantis.
I mean, I saw Splash. I mean, I wanted there to be mermaids,
Oh, for sure, dude.
Daryl Hannah for the win.
For the win.
Let me ask you this, dude.
Mm-hmm.
When he's talking about, going back to Lou's second story and that experience with like the swirling portal and all these faces and stuff, not only is that maybe one of the most terrifying things for me to picture.
Oh, yeah.
Especially that silent scream and that vivid memory that he's got of it.
Yeah.
What do you think was going on there? Like, was it just a portal that was open? They're just checking things out? Or are they like, ooh, an innocent child? Like what was going on there?
Well, first off, it gives me the imagery of, and I can't think of the specific 80s movie. I mean, it was a common thing in 80s movies, like special effects, when you would see these ghosts and it was like, you could tell that it was sort of like overlaid and probably drawn, kind of how like the Emperor, like Palpatine has like the electricity, all that's like hand drawn.
Yeah.
From like Star Wars. It was that similar sort of effect where it's that sort of blue into white. I think Poltergeist had it. You'll see like souls coming out of people's, that kind of thing. So I picture that, which is just amazing sort of 80s imagery. But when he was talking about like the laughing and the taunting thing, it reminded me of a lot of the sort of indigenous cultures around the world where they make these masks where they're like smiling and making like mean faces. And I wonder if that's like based off of like what they're seeing. Like these spirits are like just basically trying to like scare,
Yeah.
But it's just that it's that like they're intentionally like trying to like scare him. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's just with that kind of stuff, it's like, what are they? Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. Like, why? Like, are they feeding off of fear?
Yeah, right.
It's the thing that I was thinking of, if there's a purpose, or maybe we're just trying to rationalize it and there isn't a purpose, and that's equally terrifying.
Yeah. I mean, and that goes back to, which I've mentioned before, my own sort of shadow person encounter, where it could have easily, lifted its arms in like a threatening way, or like done, like if it was actually like trying to elicit like this fear, but it was just, I mean, obviously it's like a core memory, like a fear-based trauma memory in my life. But when I think of it from like the 30,000 foot view, it's like, well, if it was trying to elicit some sort of fear response, like it could have done a lot more instead of just sort of stand there.
Right.
So there was like sort of that observer effect, which is very different from what I feel like Lou experienced with like the portal. Didn't Clay also have like a portal thing that opened up?
Yeah, I feel like yes.
Because you hear a lot about those. I mean, I would love to see something like that. But.
I'm not saying it. No, not me. I love to hear it. Listen, I want to hear all the stories about it. I do not want that to happen in my house.
Well, hey, I will put this out there. If there is anybody out there who uses like spirit boards or whatever, since we don't, because we're terrified of that kind of stuff.
And be careful what you're asking for.
I'm just saying, if anybody is totally cool with that kind of stuff.
Utilize Tyler's name. Do not.
No. I'm just saying, ask, so hold on. See if the spirits that you're communing with know about this movie that Woody's trying to figure out.
Okay, fair question.
Because if AI can't do it, that's the only way.
Yeah. Oh, man. Anyway, dude, I love these kind of stories. I love the fact that we have listeners that have had these experiences. I appreciate all the listeners that have, up until this point, sent us their stories and that we've had the opportunity to share. And in the future, I think every time someone shares their story, everybody else that's thinking about it, or maybe like, I don't know, it kind of gives them that support and that sort of nudge to send those stories our way. So, Lou, for real, thank you so much. I feel like we're all one and the same here, man. I mean, we're like cut from the same cloth.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel exactly the same way. If you're also cut from that same cloth and you would like to reach out to us, you can do so over on our Instagram. Jump in the comment section. Tell us your own story in a DM. If it's more long form, head over to thatwouldberadpod@gmail.com. If you're brave like Lou and would like your story to be featured on the show and or in your own voice featured on a future episode, you can do so over at our website, thatwouldberadpodcast.com. Help support the show. If you have the financial means to do so, over on our Patreon, the Rabbit Trail. It's sort of the best possible way to do that, and it's more of what you love, and it just helps keep the lights on. Tell a single friend about the show. Give us a 5-star review. It really, really, really helps sort of trick the algorithm. Oh, also, I think we're caught up on all of our episodes being over on YouTube. I know a lot of folks don't, they use podcatchers. I don't listen to podcasts over on YouTube, but a lot of people still do, which is interesting to me. So if you do have any folks that aren't quite caught up on, or they're not big on like listening to like a lot of podcasts, they do so over on YouTube. Yeah, tell them about the show and subscribe. That also helps kind of boost the algorithm. But I guess that's about it, man. I'm leaving for Las Vegas this week for my wife's birthday. It should be really cool. We're going to see the Eagles in the Sphere, which should be really, really rad. And so I'm excited. You got anything else, Woody?
I think that's about it, man.
Right on. Well, we love you. We appreciate you. And as always,
be rad.
That's the way it goes. The way it goes. clouds in a time where I just needed some sunshine. You were already dead, for you became a ghost. You always said our future would be a parade of flowers, but now all that's left is a single rose. That's the way it goes.